My name is Lily. I am 32 years old, a Vietnamese American woman who grew up in the heart of San Jose, California. My parents came to the United States with little more than hope and determination, working tirelessly in a small family restaurant that became our second home. I spent my childhood between the aroma of pho broth and the hum of late-night conversations about bills, rent, and dreams deferred. That was my first lesson in resilience, and perhaps in invisibility. I graduated from Stanford with an MBA, a milestone that once felt like the ultimate validation. Now, I am the chief financial officer at a venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. My days are filled with numbers, negotiations, and the quiet thrill of closing deals worth tens of millions of dollars. Last year alone, I led a portfolio that brought in over $50 million in returns for our investors. My colleagues respect me, my team trusts me, and on paper, I am the embodiment of the American dream. Yet, in my husband's family, I am still an outsider. David, my husband, is the only son of the Tran family, a dynasty that owns a chain of luxury hotels across Los Angeles. With assets valued at over $300 million, their world is one of charity galas, private jets, and whispered conversations about legacy. The first time I visited their Beverly Hills mansion, I felt like I had stepped onto a different planet. Marble floors, oil paintings of ancestors, and a dining table that could seat 20. I remember my mother-in-law's eyes appraising me, her smile polite but distant. Family gatherings are elaborate affairs, always with an undercurrent of comparison. My sister-in-law, Emily, is the daughter of a tech billionaire. She is effortlessly elegant, with degrees from Yale and Harvard, fluent in French and Mandarin, and always seems to know the right thing to say. At every dinner, my mother-in-law finds a way to remind me, "You should learn from Emily. She understands how to be a wife in a family like ours." Sometimes she says it gently, sometimes with a hint of impatience. I laugh it off. But inside, I feel the sting. No matter how much I achieve, I am measured against a standard that was never meant for me. There is an unspoken hierarchy in this family, and I'm always reminded of my place. When the family discusses business, I am rarely asked for my opinion. Despite my background in finance, decisions are made behind closed doors, with the assumption that I wouldn't understand, or worse, that I shouldn't be involved. Once, after I suggested a strategy to diversify the hotel's investments, my father-in-law smiled and said, "That's very ambitious, Lily, but we have our own advisors." The conversation moved on, leaving me with a familiar sense of being dismissed. Sometimes I wonder if it is my background, my accent, that slips out when I am tired. My parents' modest house in San Jose, the fact that I worked through college and paid off $200,000 in student loans by myself. I have always been proud of my journey. But here, it feels like a secret I must hide. The Tran family values tradition, appearances, and above all, control. I am expected to be grateful, to fit in, to not make waves. The pressure is relentless. Every choice I make is scrutinized: what I wear, how I speak, even how I arrange flowers for the dinner table. There are moments when I catch David looking at me with concern, but he rarely intervenes. "It's just the way they are," he says. "Give it time." But time feels like a luxury I am running out of. In this family, my achievements are invisible, my voice is quieted, and my worth is always in question. I am the immigrant girl who made good, but never quite good enough. I wonder, sometimes, what it would take to be seen, truly seen, for who I am and not just where I come from or what I represent. And I wonder if, deep down, I am already losing myself in the effort to belong. The Tran family's flagship hotel in Beverly Hills glowed like a jewel under the California sun. Its limestone facade draped in cascading white orchids, 500 guests, CEOs, socialites, foreign dignitaries filled the grand ballroom, their diamonds catching the light of crystal chandeliers. My wedding dress, A custom Vera Wang gown costing $50,000 felt heavier with every step. David squeezed my hand as we approached the altar. His smile warm but strained. "You look perfect," he whispered. For a fleeting moment, I believed him. The ceremony blurred into a montage of vows and applause, but during the reception, my father-in-law, Mr. Uki Tran, rose from his seat at the head table. He adjusted his Brioni suit, the same steely composure he wore during board meetings, and motioned for the microphone. The room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth but edged with venom. "Today should be a celebration of family, but I cannot stand here and pretend." His gaze locked onto mine. "My son deserves a partner who values our legacy, not someone obsessed with climbing social ladders, Lily." He paused, the name dripping with disdain. "You may have bought a $50 dress, but you'll never buy your way into this family." The air vanished from my lungs. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Somewhere, a champagne flute shattered. Climbing social ladders, the words echoed. Twisting the knife deeper, I thought of the prenuptial agreement he'd forced me to sign 6 months earlier. The one where I'd relinquished all claims to the family's $300 million empire in exchange for a $1 million severance if David and I divorced. "It's standard," he'd said, sliding the papers across his mahogany desk. For protection, I'd signed without hesitation, wanting only to prove my love wasn't transactional. Now, that same document felt like a receipt for my dignity. Look at her face, a woman's voice, sharp and familiar, cut through the silence. Emily, my sister-in-law, smirked from her seat beside her tech mogul father. "She's been counting David's money since day one." The room erupted in murmurs. Gold digger, opportunist. The accusations buzzed like wasps. My vision tunneled. I gripped the edge of the table, my manicured nails digging into the ivory linen. David stood frozen, his face ashen. A memory surged 3 weeks earlier. I'd transferred $30 million from my personal portfolio to bail out the Tran's flailing hotel chain. Mr. Tran had begged me in private, his pride crumbling as he confessed. "We'll lose everything without this," I'd agreed, asking only for discretion. Now, he stood before our world, painting me as the villain. "Dad, stop!" David finally found his voice, but his father raised a hand. "Let me finish. Lily, you've always been clever with numbers, but this family isn't one of your Silicon Valley deals." He spat the word like an insult. "You'll never be one of us." The humiliation burned hotter than the spotlights. I scanned the sea of faces guests we'd flown in on private jets, friends who'd received $10, $0 gift baskets, all now staring at me with pity or scorn. My eyes landed on the wedding cake, a 6-foot tower adorned with sugar flowers. Its price tag, $15. Suddenly grotesque. I turned to David, desperate for an ally, but he stood rigid, conflict twisting his features. His silence was worse than his father's words. I need air," I stammered, stumbling toward the nearest exit. The train of my dress snagged on a chair leg, tearing lace worth more than my parents' first car. In the bridal suite, I collapsed against the door, my body shaking. My phone buzzed, a notification from my investment app. The $30 million I'd injected into the Tran empire had already yielded a 12% return. The irony choked me. A knock. David's voice. Muffled. "Lily, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" I hissed, yanking the door open. "That your family used me, that you knew." He flinched. I didn't think he'd go this far. I thought, "After you saved us?" "Saved you?" I laughed bitterly. "Your father just told 500 people I'm a fraud. Do you have any idea what this does to my reputation? To me?" He reached for me, but I recoiled. "You should have stopped him." "I tried. Not hard enough. The words hung between us. A verdict. I glanced at the vanity mirror, where my makeup, $800 for the artist, streaked down my face in black rivers. In that moment, I saw myself through their eyes, the scholarship kid from San Jose, forever scrambling to belong. I stripped off my veil, the tulle scratching like a crown of thorns. Tell your father his hotels are safe, but I'm done playing the grateful immigrant. David's eyes widened. Where are you going? Anywhere but here. I shoved past him, heels clacking against marble as I fled. The exit sign glowed red. A beacon, behind me. The orchestra struck up a waltz, the music swelling as if nothing had happened. But everything had. In the parking lot, I fumbled with my phone, dialing my mother, her voice, warm and frayed from years of night shifts, answered on the first ring. Con Oi. Are you okay? The dam broke. Sobs racked my chest as I slid into the driver's seat of my Tesla, a gift to myself. After closing a $200 million deal last quarter, they hate me. Ma. Then come home, she said softly. Your worth isn't in their pockets. I stared at the hotel, its windows blazing like a gilded cage. Somewhere inside, my $1, $2 million diamond ring sat abandoned on a table. Let them keep it. As I drove away, the GPS screen flickered. A notification popped up: Portfolio Update 3, $6 million today. I turned off the screen. For the first time in years, the numbers brought no comfort. The bridal suite smelled of wilted gardenias. My $52 Orlola's dress pulled around me like discarded tissue paper as I slumped against the door, the weight of 500 judgmental eyes still pressing into my skin. My chest heaved in uneven bursts, each breath scraping against memories I'd buried. The first Thanksgiving dinner, when Mrs. Tran mistakenly set my place at the children's table. The charity gala where Emily adjusted my neckline in front of photographers, whispering, "We don't want you looking cheap, do we?" I clawed at the pearl buttons along my back, fingers trembling. The fabric resisted, as if the dress itself were mocking me. You'll never belong here, it seemed to say. My phone vibrated, a text from David. Please let me in. We can fix this. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Fix this. How does one fix a $30 million betrayal? The number pulsed in my skull. 30 million. The exact sum I'd wired from my personal accounts to salvage his family's crumbling empire last spring. Mr. Tran had wept in my office that day, his pride dissolving into desperation. You're the only one who can help us, he'd said. The memory curdled now, sour and toxic. A knock. Lily David's voice, muffled through the door. I'm so sorry. Just open the door. I pressed my forehead to the cool marble floor. The tiles reminded me of my parents' kitchen, the one where I'd sat at 3 a.m. a decade ago, calculating how many shifts at the campus library it would take to pay off $200 in student loans. 6 years. I'd realized then, 6 years of ramen dinners and thrift store blazers. I'd worn those same blazers to my first interviews in Silicon Valley, ironing them meticulously in shared dorm bathrooms. You think I'm here for money? I whispered to the empty room. My laughter came out jagged, hysterical, the diamond band on my finger, a 5-carat monstrosity worth $1.2 million dug into my palm as I clenched my fist. Another vibration. My mother's name flashed on the screen. Come home. Con, we're waiting. Home. The cramped San Jose apartment where my parents still lived. Its walls papered with my graduation photos and newspaper clippings about my promotions, where success meant surviving, not sparking envy in billionaires. I yanked the last button free and stepped out of the dress, leaving it crumpled like a shed skin. In the mirror, my reflection startled me. Mascara streaked down my cheeks, hair tumbling from its 3 just under the updo. I looked wild, untamed, alive. David knocked again. Louder. Lily? Please. I opened the door just enough to see his face, the face I'd loved for 3 years, now pale and strained. Did you know? My voice surprised me steady, cold. Know what? That your father planned this, that he'd humiliate me at my own wedding after I saved him. He recoiled as if slapped. No, I swear. I thought he'd accepted you, after the investment. The investment you begged me to keep secret. I stepped closer, my bare feet silent on the floor. Why? David? So he could take credit. So your family wouldn't have to admit they needed an outsider. His silence was answer enough. I reached past him, grabbing the silk robe embroidered with the Tran family crest, a wedding gift from Emily. The thread scratched my throat as I tied it shut. Tell your father the deal's off. I want my $30 million back by Monday. David's eyes widened. You can't be serious. The hotels, the employees are your problem now. I shoved past him, the robe billowing like a surrender flag. The hallway stretched endlessly, each step echoing with ghosts of compromises I'd made, hiding my mother's homemade bancang during family dinners because the smell might offend, laughing politely when Mr. Rut Tran joked about my quaint public school education, silencing my opinions during board meetings, biting my tongue until it bled. By the time I reached the service elevator, anger had crystallized into something sharper, more dangerous. The parking garage swallowed me in shadows. My Tesla Model S Plaid I'd bought with my first 7-figure bonus hummed to life. As I sped past the hotel's glittering entrance, a valet gaped at my disheveled state. Let him stare. Let them all stare. Rain slapped the windshield as I merged onto the 101 freeway. My phone lit up with notifications, 12 missed calls from David. A voicemail from Mrs. Tran darling. Let's discuss this like adults. An email from my CFO portfolio gains hit $5, $8 million today. I turned off the screen. Numbers had always been my refuge. Their logic a balm against chaos. But tonight, they felt hollow. 2 hours later, I stood on my parents' doorstep, soaked and shivering. The porch light flickered, the same bulb Dad had forgotten to replace for a decade. Mom opened the door. Her nightgown faded, eyes brimming. Without a word, she pulled me into a hug that smelled of ginger and sesame oil. Ma. I choked out. I failed. She cupped my face, her palms rough from decades of dishwater. Failed who, them? She spat the word like a curse. You think success is bending until you break. Dad appeared behind her, holding my childhood blanket, a threadbare thing patched with Hello Kitty stickers. Come, he said. We made chow. As I sat at the chipped formica table, steam from the rice porridge warming my face, my phone buzzed again. A text from Emily. You've embarrassed us all. Return the ring. I slid the diamond off my finger. It glinted under the fluorescent light. A grotesque parody of commitment. For a heartbeat. I considered hurling it through the window. Instead, I dropped it into my empty teacup, where it landed with a dull clink. What will you do, Mom asked, stirring honey into my tea. I thought of the prenup I'd signed, the $1 million exit fee, of the $30 million now circling the drain of the Tran's hubris, of the way David's hands had shaken as he slid the ring onto my finger. I'll survive, I said. I always do. But survival, I realized, wasn't enough anymore. The clock read 2:17 about AM. When I opened my laptop, the blue light harsh against the dark kitchen, my investment dashboard glowed total net worth. $87.04 million. Enough to buy a small island. Enough to vanish. I clicked Transfer Funds, initiating the withdrawal of every penny I'd invested in Tran Holdings. The screen asked for confirmation. Are you sure? Somewhere in Beverly Hills, a dynasty was about to crumble. I hit yes. Rain tapped against the window. A steady rhythm. In the silence, I finally let myself cry, not for the life I'd lost, but for the girl who'd spent too long begging for crumbs at a table where she deserved a throne. When the tears dried, I opened a new tab, commercial real estate listings. I typed, San Francisco, 10, LUR plus SQFT, immediate occupancy. The numbers welcomed me back, old friends reminding me who I was. A fighter. A survivor. Enough. The morning after the wedding fiasco, Los Angeles woke to tabloid headlines screaming Tran dynasty in shambles gold digger bride, storms out of $2, $5 million wedding paparazzi camped outside my parents' San Jose home, their lenses clawing at the blinds. I sat at the kitchen table, my untouched coffee cold, scrolling through vile comments. She's just another social climber who wears a $50K dress to a sham marriage. Then, at 10:07 a.m., my phone exploded. Breaking news: Tran Holdings CEO calls emergency press conference. The live stream loaded jerkily. There, in the same Beverly Hills hotel ballroom where I'd been crucified hours earlier, David stood at a podium flanked by the Tran Holdings logo. His tie was askew, eyes bloodshot. Behind him, his father's face was granite, while Emily glared daggers at the floor. I have a statement, David began. Voice raw. Cameras flashed like lightning. Yesterday, my family committed an unforgivable act of cowardice. The room hushed. My mother gripped my shoulder. The woman I love, Lily Tran, saved this company. He slammed a folder on the podium. In April 2022, Tran Holdings was 11 hours from filing Chapter 11. We defaulted on $180 million in loans. 2,000 employees were about to lose their jobs. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Mr. Tran reached for the microphone, but David blocked him. My father, David continued, trembling, begged Lily to invest her personal funds. She wired $30 million that night. Her own money, with no collateral, no public credit. She did it to save our legacy. He thrust a document toward the camera's bank transfers, time-stamped 9 to 47 p. Ost. En FIFOT. April 15th, 2022. My signature glared back in bold ink. Reporters surged forward. Mr. Tran, is this true? David's gaze locked onto the camera, as if seeing through the lens to where I sat. While my father took credit in press releases, he forced Lily to sign an NDA. He called her a charity case in private. Last night, he weaponized her generosity to destroy her. The screen split one side showing David's tear-streaked face, the other replaying Mr. Tran's wedding speech. You'll never buy your way into this family. In the ballroom, chaos erupted. A reporter shouted, Mr. Tran Sr., did you knowingly slander your daughter-in-law? The old man froze, his carefully constructed facade cracking. Emily tried to drag him away, but he shook her off. For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Then, a sound no one expected: applause. It started at the back, a single pair of hands clapping. Heads turned as a woman in a hotel uniform pushed forward. Maria Gonzalez, head of housekeeping, her name tag glinting. I have something to say. David, stunned, handed her the mic. Senorita Lily, Maria began, voice quivering. You don't know me, but your money paid for my son's cancer treatment. She pulled a photo from her pocket, a boy, bald and smiling, holding a get well soon card signed from the Tran family. When the hospitals rejected us, your fund covered the $300 experimental drug. You didn't just save jobs, you saved families. The room erupted. Camera lights swiveled to capture employees flooding in, waitstaff, accountants, maintenance workers, holding handmade signs, Gracias. Lily, 2. Varos families. 1 hero. Mr. Ainstran sank into a chair, hands over his face. Emily tried to shield him, but the crowd pressed closer. Then, the unthinkable David dropped to his knees, live on national television. Lily, he rasped. I'm sorry I didn't fight for you, the man I admired. He glanced at his father. Was a liar. You're the strongest person I've ever known. If you'll let me, I'll spend forever proving it. My mother gasped. On screen, Mr. Tran stood abruptly, his chair screeching. Enough, he barked. But his voice broke. I made a mistake. The room fell silent. Lily, he gripped the podium, knuckles white. The NDA. It wasn't just to protect the company. I was ashamed. A 70-year-old man begging his daughter-in-law for scraps. He looked directly into the camera, his pride dissolving. You were everything this family should have embraced. Forgive me. The confession hung in the air, fragile and seismic. In San Jose, my father muted the TV. What will you do? I stared at the frozen image of David kneeling, vulnerable, finally choosing me, and the $87 million wire transfer confirmation glowing on my laptop. Outside, paparazzi shouted questions they'd never dared ask before. Ms. Tran, will you sue? Do you still love him? But another sound cut through car doors slamming. Through the window, I saw them, dozens of Tran Holdings employees, some in uniform, others holding toddlers, forming a human barrier between the reporters and our door. Maria stepped forward, pressing a bouquet of yellow roses, my favorite, though I'd never told anyone against the window. For the woman who sees us, she mouthed. My phone buzzed, a notification from my investment bank. Tran Holdings stock plummets, 40% in pre-market trading. But beneath it, an email from David. Subject, I'll wait. Body. The prenup is shredded. The $30 million is in your account. I'm staying at the Fairmont. Come if you want to rebuild. Stay away if you want to burn it all down. I'll love you either way. The screen blurred. For years, I'd measured worth in spreadsheets and exit strategies. Now, the numbers meant nothing. Ma, I whispered. Should I go back? She kissed my forehead, her lips chapped but warm. Only you know the price of your peace. Gone. Outside, the crowd began chanting my name. Epilogue to the climax. Hours later, at the Fairmont's rooftop bar, I found David staring at the city skyline. He turned, hope and fear warring in his eyes. I don't trust you, I said. He nodded. I know. I want a new prenup. My $30 million becomes 51% equity in Tran Holdings. He blinked. You'd own the company. And you'd work for me. A beat passed, then he laughed, a real, unguarded sound I'd never heard before. Deal. As we shook on it, the first raindrops fell, washing the smog from the air. Somewhere below, the chants continued. Lily, Lily, Lily. The city's rhythm had changed. So had mine. The Tran family boardroom smelled of sandalwood and regret. I stood at the head of the 20-foot mahogany table, my palms pressed against its polished surface, staring down at the documents that would redefine my place in this dynasty. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the family crest etched into the wall. A golden dragon coiled around the word legacy. How fitting that it now watched over my terms. Mr. Tran sat to my right, his Rolex ticking louder than his breathing. Mrs. Tracy Tran dabbed her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, while Emily glared from the far end of the table, her Botoxed forehead refusing to crease. David hovered near the door, a silent sentinel. Let's make this quick, I said. sliding copies of the amended prenuptial agreement across the table. 3 conditions. Emily snorted. You're in no position to… 1, I interrupted, locking eyes with Mr. Tran. I keep my 51% stake in Tran Holdings. You'll retain the title of CEO, but major decisions require my approval. His jaw twitched. This is extortion. No, I corrected. It's collateral. You've proven my trust costs $30 million. Consider this insurance. Mrs. Tran sniffled. Lily, must we be so transactional? I ignored her. Turning to the second page. 2. No more NDAs. No more secrets. The press gets full transparency about my role in saving this company. Emily slammed her hand on the table. You'll tank our reputation. Your reputation, I said coolly, was built on my money and my silence. I'm done being your ghostwriter. David stepped forward, his voice steady. She's right. The room stilled. Even the grandfather clock in the corner seemed to pause. Mr. Tran's hands trembled as he flipped through the documents. And the third condition? I leaned in. My blazer a tailored Saint Laurent power piece I'd bought with last quarter's bonus brushing the table. You apologize, publicly, to me, your employees, and every person you've ever made feel small. Mrs. Tran gasped. Emily muttered, unbelievable, under her breath. I won't beg, Mr. Tran growled. Then I withdraw all funding by 5 PRMM. Today, I tapped my phone, pulling up the transfer screen. Your choice, humility or bankruptcy. The air thickened. Somewhere in the building, an elevator dinged. Fine. Mr. Tran spat, but the press statement stays vague. No, I stood, my heels clicking against marble as I circled the table. You'll say exactly this. Lily Tran's leadership saved our family and our future. We are deeply ashamed of our past behavior. Emily shot up, her chair screeching. You're tearing this family apart. No, I said, stopping beside her. You did that when you valued pride over people. I nodded to Maria, the head housekeeper, who'd quietly entered with a tray of espresso. Her presence was deliberate, a living reminder of the 2 Don's employees watching. Mr. Reitentran scribbled his signature with a shaking hand, ink blotting the paper. Happy now? Not yet. I turned to Mrs. Tran. The heirloom jade necklace. She clutched her throat. That's been in our family for generations. And now it'll stay with someone who values heritage over hierarchy. I held out my hand. You gave it to Emily at her wedding. I want mine. David stepped between us. Take mine. He unclasped the platinum cufflinks his father had gifted him at graduation, placing them in my palm. They're worth more, and they're yours. For the first time, my resolve wavered. The cufflinks engraved with the Tran dragon had been his most prized possession. Mrs. Tran began weeping in earnest. David, how could you? He didn't look at her, because she's my family now. Later, in the parking garage, I leaned against my car, the cufflinks burning a hole in my pocket. David approached, hands in his pockets. You didn't have to destroy him, he said quietly. Yes, I did. I stared at the concrete, remembering all the times I'd parked here as the help's daughter. They needed to feel it, the powerlessness. He reached for me but stopped mid-gesture. Where do we go from here? I raised an eyebrow. I meant the company, the family. The lie hung between us. I opened the car door. Forward, just forward. As I drove away, I glanced at the rearview mirror. David stood motionless, his shadow stretching long and thin under fluorescent lights. A man caught between 2 worlds. Epilogue to the confrontation. That night, the Tran Holdings Twitter account posted a 27-second video. Mr. Tran, stooped and ashen, recited the apology I'd scripted. By morning, the clip had 2-3 million views. Emily unfollowed me on Instagram. Mrs. Tran sent a handwritten note with the jade necklace. "You've earned this." It read, the ink smudged, as if she'd cried over the words. And David. He showed up at my new penthouse with a single suitcase and a proposal. "Let me earn your trust. No hotels, no shareholders, just us." I left him standing at the door, but I didn't lock it. Final line. In the end, boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges. The question is, who's willing to cross them? The last box sat by the door of the Tran mansion. Its contents mundane. A framed photo from my college graduation. A stack of financial journals. A jade necklace that no longer felt like a trophy. Outside, the September fog curled over Los Angeles, blurring the city into a watercolor of grey and gold. I stood on the balcony, my fingertips brushing the cold railing, and inhaled the salt-tinged air. Somewhere below, waves crashed against the cliffs, relentless, free. David found me there, his shadow stretching across the marble floor. "You don't have to leave," he said, voice frayed at the edges. I didn't turn. "Yes, I do." He stepped closer, the scent of his cologne vetiver, and regret filling the space between us. "What if I come with you?" The question hung like a loose thread. For months, I'd imagined this moment his surrender, my vindication, but now it felt weightless. "You'd hate my new apartment," I said lightly. "The elevator's broken half the time, and the neighbors blast reggaeton at midnight." He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Sounds alive. Alive? The word resonated. I'd spent years in gilded tombs, polishing someone else's legacy. Tomorrow, I'd sign the lease for a downtown loft with exposed brick walls and a view of the 110 freeway, a far cry from Beverly Hills, but mine. "The board approved your startup funding," David added. Hesitating, $15 million, as requested. I finally faced him. "It's not a request. It's reparations." He flinched but nodded. The money, drawn from Tran Holdings' coffers, would launch Lumen Ventures, a fund investing in minority-owned businesses. My first client, a Vietnamese immigrant developing solar-powered street carts for L.A., is food deserts. "You could have asked for more," he said. I did. I gestured to the city below. I took back my time. Silence settled. Comfortable, yet final. David lingered, as if waiting for an invitation to rewrite our story. But some bridges only lead one way. The email to my mother was brief. Subject: "I'm coming home, sort of." Body: "Ma. Found a place near Little Saigon. The kitchen's big enough for your Ban Hexeo pan. Let's cook this weekend, con." Her reply came in under a minute: "Bring extra fish sauce." That night, I drove to Santa Monica Pier. The Ferris wheel spun lazily, its lights reflecting in the black Pacific. I walked barefoot along the shore, the foam kissing my ankles, and thought of Maria's son alive because $300, $1,000 bought him a chance, of the 2,000 employees whose paychecks now had my signature, of the girl who once thought love meant shrinking to fit. My phone buzzed. A calendar alert: Lumen Ventures launch party, tomorrow, 7 p.m. I deleted it. Instead, I typed a note into my blog, a quiet corner of the internet where I'd chronicled my journey anonymously. What is forgiveness? Is it the silence after the storm, or the courage to rebuild in the ruins when they tell you to choose between dignity and grace? Remember, you can walk away and still leave the door ajar, not for them, but for the person you'll become. So I ask you, if your scars could speak, would they beg for apologies or demand the right to heal? Where do you draw the line between bending and breaking? Tell me your story. I'm listening. The post went live at midnight, By morning, comments poured in. Stories of fractured families, quiet rebellions, daughters who traded gold chains for self-worth. Final scene. The movers arrived at dawn. As they loaded the last box, sunlight broke through the fog, gilding the mansion's gates. I slid the Tran family cufflinks into an envelope and left it on the kitchen island. No note, let them wonder. At the edge of the driveway, I paused. The security camera blinked red, a mechanical eye recording my exit. I raised a hand, not a wave, but an acknowledgement. Then I drove east, toward the sun. Last line. They say you can't outrun your past, but what if the future is just a choice to walk, eyes open, into the light? So, dear reader, when the world tries to name you, will you let it, or will you write your own damn story?